August 15th, 1971.
The conclusion of the most significant monetary agreement in the history of the world.
President Nixon signs an executive order that ends America's use of the gold standard and creates the system of paper currency that is still used today. For the first time in the history of the country, the United States dollar was no longer directly linked to gold. It is one of the most precious metals in the world.
People throughout the centuries have chased after it.
A glittering commodity so rare that some will go to almost any lengths to get it.
They're using secret agents around the world to acquire it.
But who sets its price? Does there really exist America's Book of Secrets?
I don't know where the selling is coming from, but it certainly does feed the flames of the conspiracies that say they are deliberately trying to sell gold, knock the price down, because this happens with no news.
The Plunge Protection Team, the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, it's headed by the Secretary of the Treasury, the head of the Securities and Exchange Commission, and the Chairman of the Federal Reserve. And they get together and meet secretly to manipulate the price of gold and the markets and try and keep confidence in the currency.
Under the gold standard, the government was constrained in its monetary policy by the amount of gold it had. If you had X amount of gold, that meant you could have X amount of currency. The currency had to be backed by gold according to a fixed ratio.
The Founding Fathers wanted to limit government, and one of the ways you limit the power of government is with a gold standard. Government can only spend money if it can collect gold and taxes. So by going off the gold standard, there's no limit to how much money the government can create, so there's no limit to the size that the federal government can grow.
If you were going to put gold back in the center of the international monetary system, the price would have to be $9,000 or $10,000 per ounce in order to support world finance. The United States doesn't want that. We want a dollar system where we can print the dollar.
Was Richard Nixon's shocking decision to abandon the gold standard really part of a secret plot to bolster the United States dollar? A plot that continues to this day?
The biggest secret about the gold standard is that a gold standard works. America became the wealthiest nation the world had ever seen under a gold standard. Since we've abandoned the gold standard, it's been downhill.
In 2009, WikiLeaks uploaded a cable from the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, revealing that the Chinese government believed the United States was suppressing the price of gold to strengthen the dollar as the world's reserve currency, ultimately benefiting America's bankers, the Federal Reserve, and the White House. But perhaps even more shocking was the fact that the Chinese government had been secretly acquiring hundreds of tons of gold for themselves.
China's using intelligence assets, military assets, secret agents, banks around the world to acquire gold. No one knows exactly how much they're acquiring, but there's a lot of gold that's sort of off the books.
The Federal Reserve is one of the most secret organizations that there is. We don't know what they've done with our gold. The lure of gold is that it's the ultimate form of money, and people throughout the centuries have chased after it and risked their lives.
Today, the United States gold reserves are stored in 4 highly guarded vaults, located at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York, the U.S. Mint in Denver, and 2 military bases, West Point and Fort Knox. In 2011, former Congressman Ron Paul challenged the government to prove its holdings, petitioning Congress to audit the gold in the bullion depository at Fort Knox in Kentucky, where the majority of the United States stash is housed.
This gold belongs to the people and the government owes it to the people to provide them with the details of these holdings, who owns the gold and who is responsible for ownership.
But the United States Department of the Treasury, the executive agency that works with the Federal Reserve Bank to oversee the nation's gold reserve, refused.
The Federal Reserve is one of the most secret organizations that there is. Ron Paul told me as a congressman he could find more out about what the CIA is doing than what the Federal Reserve is doing. We don't know what they've done with our gold.
How do we know the gold is actually there? Because it's been a long time since anyone is down in those vaults certifying that the gold is there.
But according to reports, in 2012, government officials did, in fact, quietly conduct a first-ever audit on the gold at the Federal Reserve Bank in New York. Their findings? Not only is the gold in the vault, but it tested purer than previously reported. Still, some question whether this evaluation can truly be trusted.
The biggest secret concerning America's gold hoard. There hasn't been a real audit of it in more than half a century.
There's been very cursory audits of the Federal Reserve that don't actually mean anything. They've never dug down deep to see what the Federal Reserve is up to. And this is the biggest heist of the century, actually.
Is the United States government really overstating the amount of gold in its reserves? Some believe the answer is yes, and that greater measures are being taken to hide the truth than ever before. Coming up.
If we really have all that gold, why can't we just send it to them?
33 Liberty Street. Located in the heart of New York City's financial district, the Federal Reserve Bank has become a tourist hotspot. Known for its massive vault, buried 5 stories below the bustling streets, and loaded with 6,700 tons of gold, valued at a staggering $368.5 billion.
This vault is cut into solid bedrock. There's only one very narrow way in or out. Most of the gold that's there has been there for a very long time and doesn't move around.
The Federal Reserve Vault has become known as the world's largest bullion warehouse. But surprisingly, much of the bullion it contains is not owned by the government. And as the price of gold continues to rise, so will the hunt for the rare metal. In fact, some gold advocates believe the future of gold looks bright, and they say it's only a matter of time before many Americans will secretly carry gold bars in their pockets. Like this Valcambi gold card.
You'll see I've got a Valcambi bar already partially broken. Even if it was an entire bar, it would fit in here just like a credit card. Here I've got some of the little chips that came off of that piece, but each one is identical and each one is worth 1 gram of gold, which is around $40 to $50 right now. But who knows how much these little chips will be worth in the future.
Could physical gold actually replace credit cards in the not-so-distant future? Some believe that if there is a currency crisis in the United States and the value of paper money rapidly declines, gold bars like this may be the only way to pay for goods.
Will have in the future, but you know how much value your gold has. It's had value for thousands of years, and it will still have value hundreds of years from now.
It has been more than 40 years since President Nixon closed the gold window, and the rare commodity continues to stir up controversy. Will Americans ever know how much gold the government has on hand? And how much it has cashed in? Will secretive gold dealings continue to manipulate the market? And if the nation's stockpile is finally exposed, what will be discovered? A gold mine? Or perhaps just fool's gold?